The G20 summit held in Brazil has wrapped up. South Africa is a member of the G20. In fact, South Africa takes over the presidency of the G20. Will host the 2025 G20 summit. But this summit in Brazil marked a moment or a pivotal moment in the dialogue around climate action. The theme of the summit was building a just world and a sustainable planet. And the leaders of the 20 most industrialized nations in the world, they confronted how do we add or use transformative measures to confront climate and our climate crisis, man-made. But stop just short. What was noteworthy, there was an omission in the final communique around the stance on the phasing out on fossil fuels. There's no remarks there about the eventual moving away from fossil fuels. I'm joined now on the line by Kumi, Naidoo, former head of Greenpeace, now the president of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative. Good morning, Kumi. Is this a little bit of dissonance here between the rhetoric and the reality, acknowledging that climate change is a real, urgent, existential crisis, but then falling short in saying, well, let's officially at least have on paper the plan, or at least the motivation to move away from fossil fuels? Kumi?
So absolutely, Lester, there's a major disconnect. There's a denial of reality. Just to be very clear, the problem of climate change is caused primarily through our addiction to oil, coal, and gas, and the emissions that come from it. To have a conference and not explicitly say we will address 80% of the cause of climate change is complete irresponsible behavior. That's as absurd as Alcoholics Anonymous having a big global conference, and at the end of the conference, they don't mention the word alcohol in it, the main cause of alcoholism. So there is all the right words that are said about the urgency. We're running out of time. We need to act. We need to act in solidarity. All the words are there, but it's not backed by the appropriate action. We have to phase out of fossil fuels. Nobody is saying that we can do it overnight, but we need to do it as fast as possible. We should not be investing new, fresh investments in fossil fuels, and we need to phase out our dependency as fast as possible in a just way where workers are not punished and communities that are dependent are taken care of.
It's not going to happen overnight, but it could still be a very, very long day. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, South Africa's Minister of Minerals, Resources and Energy, Gwedi Mantashe, says, well, he believes that oil and gas exploration in South Africa is in fact still a sunrise industry. Where is then that congruency, if any at all, between Gwedi Mantashe's thoughts on that we still can explore and exploit, but at the same time a government that he's in part of also saying we want to make commitments to tackling a changing climate?
So there's two problems with that. One is that to call it a sunrise industry is to deny completely what the science is saying. And these days we don't even need the science to tell us that we're in a deep crisis. We need to just look at extreme weather events, the wild fluctuations from drought to flooding, which is what the climate scientists say will be Southern Africa's fate, which we have seen over the last 2 decades or more. And the other problem is that the transition to clean energy has started globally, from China to Europe and even to the US, where Trump has come in saying that climate change is a hoax. The International Energy Agency says we have no space anymore to burn and invest in any new fossil fuel projects. And they say that countries that actually do that, and if Minister Mantashe gets his way, which I'm pretty certain he won't, that we will end up with what are called stranded carbon assets, meaning we would have made investments in projects in the hope that we'd sell some of our coal or some of our other resources. And at the end of the day, we will not be able to actually maximize it because nobody will want to buy those products. So basically, it's economically unwise, it's environmentally unwise, and it really is preventing us from making the transition that we need to make. And this perpetual delays is actually going to put not only the environment at risk, but also our economy at risk.
Kumi, where does post-fossil fuel plans work amongst developing nations? The opposite of that is Norway has made so much money on oil exploration that they can say, we're shutting down our oil refineries. We've made enough money. Whereas other countries would say, well, we have a resource that can help develop our countries, but with the discussion around just transitions to a fossil fuel free world, where have post-fossil fuel plans been put in place in developing nations?
So firstly, just to correct you there, sadly, Norway is not saying what you just said. Norway is still saying we're going to continue to, and this is the hypocrisy of the global north, in the sense that they are saying all the right things. And let's be clear, the global north carries all the rich developed countries historically carry the biggest burden of the amount of carbon emissions put in the atmosphere. So therefore, what we are saying to our leaders, it is unjust what has happened, that they built the economies on dirty energy. But right now, we can't bury our heads in the sand and say, just because they did it, we will also do it, because the end result is our people are going to suffer. What we are fighting for in Baku, as we speak right now in Azerbaijan, where the COP29 is taking place, is to say, recognizing that reality, rich countries have to step up and provide significant financial resources. And we're not asking for charity here. We're saying to them, pay your climate debt. And this is your responsibility. You created the problem. Now, you cannot tell us, we need to protect our forests and so on that still exists in places like the Congo Basin or in Amazon, if you are not actually providing the resources to enable
Kumi,
us.
what's the Colombian plan, post-fossil fuel plan?
So Colombia is one of 14 nations that has endorsed the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative. It is a highly dependent fossil fuel expansion country. The economy is dependent on the expansion and exporting of fossil fuels. What they've said is, we have read the science, we cannot change the science, and all we can change is political will, and we have to get serious and take the lead. So what they've done is, they've created $40 billion of plans through 4 ministries, which we are working in partnership with, who are coming up with alternative plans to transition away from fossil fuels. Now, just to be clear, the fossil fuel treaty does not exist. We are saying countries need to come together, and once we get to 20, 25 countries, the negotiations will start. And what we're saying is, firstly, knowing what we now know, any fresh investments in new fossil fuel projects needs to stop. That's one of the commitments that parties need to make. And the second is to have the fastest and most responsible phase out of fossil fuels in a just transition way, right? So Colombia, for example, is now trying to attract not actually public sector financing, but investment financing, so that they can make the transition to ecotourism, to sustainable agriculture and other projects that both are good for the economy, but also do not harm the environment.
Kumi, Naidoo, I have to leave it there, President of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative.